Hello, welcome back to Let's Talk HP Lovecraft and Let's Talk Short Fiction. Before we get started today, just want to thank you guys for getting us over the 500 subscriber threshold. We shot past it last night and then hit 501 this morning. Next subscriber count goal will be 750 subscribers. Let's see how long it takes us to get there, but I can't do it without your help, so thanks once again. So for today's HP Lovecraft discussion, I'm talking about The Rats in the Wall, his 1924 short story which first appeared in the magazine Weird Tales. The narrator of this story is an American named Delaporte. He's the last in a long line of his family. His son was recently killed in World War I, so he moves from their home in America back to their ancestral home in England. Which at this point is a long abandoned ruin of a medieval home. The home has a bad reputation with all the locals. They're reluctant to tell him any stories about his past, but one of his friends is able to gather some of that history for him. He sets about reconstructing this place, which hasn't been occupied since the 1600s. And, there's a lot of family secrets floating around that used to be passed down from father to son in the family on the father's deathbed, but due to a fire 2 generations earlier, the envelope that would have been his father's never materialized, and therefore he himself never received the family secrets. But he goes about reconstructing the house meticulously. It is built on older ruins, and he does his best to include the old foundations, and so the old foundations as well as the new, which are made to look like the medieval version of the house, are all sort of seamlessly integrated. But he learns through his investigations, through his friend Captain Norris, he learns that the house has a past that goes back beyond medieval England to the Saxons, the Romans before them, and then possibly even the Celtic peoples who inhabited the area in prehistory. Shortly after he moves in, he begins to hear what sounds like rats scurrying behind the walls. They set up rat traps, and he has 9 cats in the house, but they never catch a single rat. But it's driving him nuts. He's having a hard time sleeping, and when he does sleep, his dreams are troubled by nightmares. One time, while investigating the source of these sounds, he puts a lantern down on the floor in the lowest sub-basement, or what he believes to be the lowest sub-basement, near what is widely believed to be an altar, possibly from the Roman period or earlier. But he sees a flicker of wind, so that gets him thinking that maybe there are more passages down here in the limestone bedrock than he knew. So he goes with his friend Captain Norris to London. A few days later, they return with a group of experts, of archaeologists and scientists, and even somebody who's more interested in psychology and the paranormal. But they quickly discover that there is a passage behind one of the altars, and this takes them down a series of steps. The steps are littered with human bones as well as rat bones. This eventually opens into a massive subterranean limestone cavern, and this cavern is absolutely full of bones. And not just bones, there are structures that they identify as one being an English building, another being a Roman building, and a Saxon building, and even structures that are older than that. And it's determined that these buildings are slaughterhouses and kitchens. And then there are also holding pens. And looking at the bones, they realize many of the bones are human. Some are humanoid, humans that have been bred in captivity and have been descended almost to the state of being, rather than bipedal, they're quadrupedal. So they're practically animals. It appears that his family has been raising humans, or was in part of raising humans as cattle, continuing some tradition that has gone on there for millennia, supplying humans to eat and to satisfy their craving for human flesh. At this revelation, Delaporte loses his mind apparently, and the next time he is found, he is next to the half-eaten bloody corpse of his former friend Captain Norris. The assumption here is that he did the killing, that he developed a craving for human flesh that was hidden in his DNA, in his ancestry, and that he killed him. At this point, he can be heard rambling a string of inaudible words in several languages: Middle English, Latin, Gaelic, and of course he is institutionalized, but he refuses to admit that he did the killing. He insists that it was the rats in the wall who did it. Those terrible rats making their terrible sounds behind the walls. So that is the synopsis of the rats in the walls. Now for some analysis, I love how this story, unlike any of the other, or many of the other stories that I've read by Lovecraft so far, it really draws on history, English history, Saxon, Roman, Celtic, and Gaelic. It creates a sense of archaeology, of historical depth that is not always present. Well, there's always a sense of depth in Lovecraft's work, but it's usually his fictional depth, whereas here there is this connection to sort of real-world history, and it kind of gets you thinking, the possibilities. I also love this idea that this family has this connection, this unbroken chain of perversion going back to prehistory. Civilizations or people who live in places now like to think that, yeah, I'm part of the original inhabitants here, when in reality people have been coming and going, and those people who have come and gone have each left a mark on us, and we've sort of they form our current civilization. I think as an American, I get the feeling that a lot of these older European cultures seem to overestimate how old they are. You know, like they don't like to admit that they were affected by Roman culture and then by Viking culture after that. But I love that idea that this dark secret has been going on for millennia beneath the beneath the feet of the people who walked in the land. This story, of course, is highly focused on a common theme that Lovecraft uses, which is this idea of cultural and genetic degradation. The idea that we've spent thousands of years creating our current culture, but it's only, like one step backwards to being returning to our animalistic past. I think that is highlighted here in a big way. In general, the story, which I've read twice now, reminds me of two other stories. The first is The Fall of the House of Usher by, of course, Poe. Not that there's much in common with them, but it's just the idea of this house and this ancestral family connection really sort of reminds me of Poe. And then also, if you've ever seen the Guillermo del Toro movie Crimson Peak, about the sort of the English countryside house that has a dark past of murder. There's also kind of reminds me of The Rats in the Wall as well. The only negative really here is that the ending seems to be a little bit rushed to me. There's good build up throughout the story, but then they sort of basically, or Lovecraft sort of basically has to explain to us, like in the last paragraph, what happened. I think he could have spent a little bit more time with the payoff, I think, and it would have made the story just a little bit more fulfilling. But otherwise, it's still a great tale. I want to say probably one of his more well-known tales as well. It was rejected by the first publisher, who said it was probably too gruesome for their audience, but of course Weird Tales picked it up, and it became one of the few stories that Lovecraft wrote to actually get anthologized in his lifetime, which means the story's been making an impact on people ever since it was published. Alright guys, that is all I have to say about The Rats in the Walls. I'm still on a limited schedule here, so I'll be doing review videos on the weekend, but you can't expect too much from me during the week. Probably got 10 or 12 more weeks of out-of-town painting work to do, but I'll do my best to keep the channel active, keep it growing during that time. And then come spring, you can expect me to be back into sort of a regular schedule with nearly daily videos. By that time, I should be through the complete works of HP Lovecraft. I'll be moving on to doing more Ray Bradbury story reviews, and also I have a review of the next Terry Goodkind book coming up, probably in end of January before I get that done. I actually had a commenter request this morning that I do more Tolkien reviews, so I'll be looking into doing that as well. So thanks again for tuning in. If you've not done so already, please subscribe, and I will see you again soon.